Non-Monogamy Help is a podcast where your questions about open, non-monogamous or polyamorous relationships are answered. Our host, Lola Phoenix, will consult a licensed therapist with over a decade of experience to address your problems. Names and locations have been changed or censored to keep your questions anonymous. You're listening to Non-Monogamy Help, the podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 13 of Non-Monogamy Help. I'm Lola Phoenix. Non-Monogamy Help is a relationship advice podcast for people in non-monogamous, polyamorous, and open relationships that comes out every other week. If you would like to send your question in, you can send it to nonmonogamyhelp@gmail.com. If you'd like to read the column, because it's also a column, and the column questions are different than the podcast questions, you can go to medium.com/non-monogamy-help. If you would like the podcast and the columns in your inbox, you can subscribe at tinyletter.com/non-monogamy-help, no hyphens. And if you'd like to be even more amazing and support the podcast and the columns, you can become a patron at patreon.com/Lola Phoenix. And that would be super amazing. And you can follow us on Twitter at non-monogamy-help, no hyphens. So yeah, this is episode 13, sorry. Again, I'm going to apologize. I'm just getting over a cold, so this is why my voice sounds a little bit scratchy. But hopefully you can deal with that this episode, and it's not too terrible. Cool, so let's get to this week's letter. I've been non-monogamous as long as I've been dating at all, about 4 years. This has included a lot of ups and downs, good relationships and bad. I identify somewhere between relationship anarchist and solo polyam at the moment. Basically, my primary relationship is with myself, but I put just as much effort into my relationships with close friends and partners, and the line between friendship and dating, or between platonic and romantic feelings for me, is a very squiggly one. A lot of my friendships are very intimate, and I have one friend in particular who I've grown closer and closer to over the 7 or 8 years she's been in my life. She lives in a different city, but I visit often, and I'm moving there in a few months. We text or call nearly daily about our lives, about my relationship problems and her mental health, and everything that brings us joy or pain. I feel completely comfortable around her in a way that I've never felt with anyone before. I realized a few months ago that my feelings are more romantic than platonic, and admitted to myself that I'm in love with her and have been for years. On New Year's Eve, she texted me that she wished she was there to kiss me, and has said similar things before, but I assume she means them in a platonic way. She recently had me read her favorite book, The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. It has a line in it that says, when you realize you can tell someone your truth, when you can show yourself to them, and when you can stand in front of them bare and the response is, you're safe with me, that's intimacy. The line is in reference to the main character realizing she loved her friend. The whole novel is about forbidden lesbian romance and how love is the truest part of ourselves. My friend and I talked about it for hours and decided to write and mail each other love letters like the main characters did in the books. There are a few things I'm wrestling with about this situation. She is an inherently monogamous person, and I've never been monogamous. I think I could be for her if she felt the same way about me. I'm not her type. She is a very specific type of woman that she's attracted to, and I'm not it. I don't think she feels the same way. I know that she loves me, but aside from mentioning wanting to give me a New Year's Eve kiss, and this being a very intimate friendship, I doubt her feelings are the same as mine. So the questions I'm left with are, should I tell her about my feelings? I've been working on the love letter, but I've been leaving it vague enough for a plausible deniability. I don't want to change our friendship in a way that makes us less close. Is it worth it? And do you think that people can successfully go from 4+ years of non-monogamy to monogamy? Do you think it's reasonable to want to do that for a specific person? How do I deal with this overwhelming uncertainty? Okay, so there are a lot of things going on here. I think the biggest kind of question for you right now is, can you handle just being friends? I kind of have told people before in episodes of the podcast that, like, just because you have romantic feelings for someone doesn't mean you have to act on them. And sometimes flirting and that kind of intimacy that you have can be enjoyable on its own, and it doesn't have to actually come to a fruition, if you will, in order to be a good thing in your life. So that's kind of like the first question, is like, can you go on being friends? Is this kind of a difficult and impossible situation for you? Do you feel pressure? Do you feel like it's untenable? Like, are you okay with this going on in perpetuity, potentially, I guess maybe until she finds another partner that she wants to settle down with, and she maybe sees having other friendships that intimately as not being a thing she can do, or can you handle that, just being friends in this very intimate way for the rest of your life? And are you willing to risk this intimacy to potentially end it, to kind of pursue her in a kind of more obvious way? I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, it's hard for me to say like what's going on inside of her head, but it feels kind of like I'm having a hard time wondering why you think she isn't into you, because I mean I'm not the one to ask about this because I really don't have intimate friendships of this level. Like, I don't do that. Like, the line for me between friend and romantic partner or romantic interest is very, very clear for me. I know very clearly when I'm into somebody and when I'm not. There are some times when it's a bit fuzzier, but I know when I'm into someone. And I generally don't, like, wish to kiss people I'm not into, and I wouldn't, like, pretend to write romantic love letters with someone that I'm in an interest to. So it really feels like for me she is into you. But it's, I don't want to say that, and I can't say that, because it might be that she, all the caveats you said about that she's monogamous, and so she feels like, well, there's no point in actually pursuing a romantic relationship with you because she can't do polyamory or non-monogamy, and she assumes you can't either. So she's just kind of enjoying this bit of kind of really close friendship you have that's kind of not accurately or outwardly spelled out. And I don't know, I mean, you say that she has a type and you're not her type, but like, again, like I have a really hard time. I mean, maybe people do. It's hard for me to say. I'm not that kind of person. I would never be this intimate and romantic with someone that I wasn't in some way interested in. So I have a hard time thinking that she's I have a hard time believing she's not at all interested in you. She might be interested in you, but sees that there isn't much of a future with you because of the non-monogamy thing. If she knows you're non-monogamous, she might be like, well, what's the point? I'm not going to be non-monogamous. But I still hope that she still enjoys this flirting aspect. So I have a hard time believing she's not at all interested in you. But it is something to think about. Are you willing to risk? Because, if you do say, actually, I would like to have a romantic relationship with you, it might be that it kind of ruins that intimacy, because maybe part of what makes her feel safe about this is that it's not defined. So the second you start to define it, it might make that stuff go away. I mean, you say that you have intimate friendships with other people. So I kind of feel like, you can have other intimate friendships, and you will have other intimate friendships in your life. So why not pursue something if you think that there's a chance that it might work out? I kind of wonder if, there's a discussion to be had if she is interested in you, of whether it's she who tries non-monogamy or you that tries monogamy. And I do think you need to really ask yourself, because you say like, oh, I could totally be monogamous for her, but is that kind of a new relationship energy talking? Can you really give that up? Because I do think people can. I personally, I feel like non-monogamy for me isn't an orientation, it's a choice. I could be monogamous if I wanted to, I just don't want to. But the thing is, I don't think I could go back to a relationship where I was forced to be monogamous. I just don't think, even though I am quite, I'm not non-monogamous because I must, I feel so strongly for so many people. It's kind of the opposite, actually. I'm non-monogamous, mostly it's my choice because I so very rarely am attracted to people that I want the chance to pursue it when, in 18 years precisely, when the planets align ever so nicely. As I commonly say as a joke, I like the chance to actually pursue it. That's my choice and my reasoning for it. But are you that kind of a person? And what does monogamy look like for her? Is it that you can't have intimate friendships with other people? You say that the line is fuzzy, and that might well very work when you're kind of not defining what you have with her. But once it is defined, if you're willing to go to monogamy, I think you need to, especially because you consider yourself a relationship anarchist, you're gonna have to really think about what that means for you, and not just for your romantic relationships, but for your friendships as well. Does that mean that you can't have those intimate friendships anymore? Are you really willing to get rid of all that? just for the sake of having a relationship with this one person. So I think that's worth you thinking about, like really thinking about, because I think you're kind of a little bit clouded by the romance going on here, because it is romance. Like you write love letters as characters in a book, so I think that's romantic. It is, far be it from me to tell you what you're doing and whether or not you should class it as romantic, but it would be very romantic for me. So, it's one thing for you to think about. You might not be able to. It just depends on how she does monogamy. It might be that in her version of monogamy, she kind of isn't as strict as some of the other people who practice monogamy may be, and maybe you can have these close, intimate friendships. So it's really worth thinking about, because that's a big. I don't even necessarily think it's about like, it changes the way you do relationships fundamentally, like the way you do friendships as well, because that line is so wobbly for you. So it's really worth thinking about. So I think once you kind of think about this kind of stuff, like, can you handle just being friends for the rest of your life? Like, however long this friendship lasts, can you handle just this being this way until presumably she finds someone else, and maybe she can't have this kind of relationship. Maybe she can. Could you do this for the rest of your life and be happy? That's a question you got to answer for yourself. Is it worth risking this? Can you have this with some other person? You have intimate friendships, and I kind of feel like, it's worth the risk. If this was like the only person you knew and you were living in a country where you didn't speak the language, and like if this was like kind of your only real close friendship, and you weren't in a position to make new friends, then I would probably be a little bit more hesitant. But you're in an okay position. You can make new friends. You can have new friendships. You will have new friendships and new connections. So I think it's, why not give it a try? But that's ultimately up to you to decide. Would you risk this if it meant ending what you have now? If it meant that, all this intimate stuff would stop the second you pursue it. Assume it will. I'm not saying it won't, because sometimes maybe you ask and she goes, nah, and then you kind of carry on. You never know. But assume for a second that would end. Are you okay with that? Can you be okay with that? Can you really go back to a monogamy that would redefine how you do your friendships and your romantic relationships? Can you really do that? Is that something you want to do? Really? And then, I think once you kind of answer some of those questions, if you think, maybe we can talk about the non-monogamy thing, because she could try non-monogamy. I don't, maybe she's more open to it than I think that's worth thinking about too. And if you feel like I can't really handle this pressure, or either way, you kind of want to go for it because life is short. Go for it. I just think you could start by asking her overtly what she thinks of non-monogamy. You got this book that you've read, and it's about falling in love with your best friend, but like, there's like 7 husbands in it, 7 husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I don't know if that means that she has 7 husbands, or if she's gone through kind of serial monogamy with 7 different men and figured out that doesn't work for her. But just ask her overtly what she thinks of non-monogamy or polyamory. Say, I've talked to you about my relationships. Well, what do you think of non-monogamy? What do you think of polyamory? I think that's a good starting point, because if she goes, oh, I can never ever do it. I can never ever ever do it. You could start to talk to her about relationship anarchy and say, well, what do you think about, if you say you have, you have a partner, would we be as close friends if you had a partner? Would that, because those questions can lead you to, I don't think you have to overtly put it on the table. I think you can ask some of these questions to decide if you want to take that leap. And if she goes, if I had a partner, I definitely, I definitely couldn't be doing this or whatever, then, you know your answer as far as what you can expect if you want to enter a monogamous relationship with her. So I think you start with those things. And if it's up to you in the end to decide if it's worth it for you. It's worth it, potentially losing this to say, hey, put your cards on the table, and let her know how you feel. I think overall, I think you should. Because I just think if if you only live once, so I know you shouldn't say YOLO, but honestly, like, why not give it a shot? It sounds really bad, but I want to be like, you can make new friends. Like, it does sound really terrible, but it is the way it is. And if you think you can have a really good relationship, then why not give it a shot? I just think the only big caveat here, the biggest caveat I think that I'm worried about here is not necessarily that you're going to ruin your friendship. Because, if you ruin your friendship, you ruin your friendship. Something else could happen that ruined your friendship, Like, so many other things can ruin friendships. I don't think that, like, being honest about how you feel and putting that on the line is, like, worth, oh, I didn't ruin the friendship. You can make new friends, as I said. But I think the biggest risk I feel for you is falling into this new relationship energy type of thing. Going, yeah, I can totally do monogamy. I think it's something I want to do. And it really depends on why you've chosen to do non-monogamy. And I kind of really do feel like if you, not just because you've chosen non-monogamy, but you've also chosen a form of non-monogamy that is really not conducive to monogamy at all. Like, you've chosen a form of non-monogamy where the line between friend and lover is very blurred for you. You've chosen a form of non-monogamy where you are solo polyam, which means that you focus on you and you don't I'm assuming, if I'm wrong, I apologize, I'm assuming you don't have primary partners. You don't do that. You do a form of non-monogamy that's least like monogamy. And I don't know if you're going to be happy changing completely how you do your friendships and your romantic relationships. That's a big ask. It's not just about you only dating one person at a time. Because I think if you could date one person at a time but still be solo poly, and that you could have still your primary relationships with yourself, you might be able to do that. But that might not be what she wants in monogamy. Like, when people want a monogamous relationship, generally speaking, they don't tend to want something that looks like solo polyam. So I think that's really the biggest caveat that I see here. But yeah, I think have those considerations, have a talk with her about non-monogamy, see what she thinks about it. See what she thinks about relationship anarchy and solo polyamory. Like, ask her about these specific things, and see, I think that once you have a good feel for how she thinks about that, and if she goes, no way, then you could decide if you want to risk it. But if she kind of seems open to it, then, you can never know. You never know until you know. You know what I mean? Sometimes you just gotta give it a try and see what happens. But yeah, I hope that helps, and good luck. Thank you so much for listening to episode 12. Before I go, I want to say thank you to our $5 patrons who get thanked at the end of the podcast. So if you want to get thanked at the end of the podcast with your name and you want to be super awesome, then you have to go to patreon.com/Lola Phoenix and donate $5 or more a month. Our patrons are Laura Boylan, Chris Albury Jones, Lena Franzi, and James Wortell at the time of recording. Thank you so much, $5 patrons. Everyone else, thank you as well for listening, and yeah, sorry about the noises in the background and my weird cough. If you want to read the columns and the podcast and listen to the podcast, you can get everything at medium.com/non-monogamy-help. And actually, I think that you can go to non-monogamyhelp.com, and that should forward you to the Medium site. If all goes according to plan, that should be how it's done now. You can get everything in your email inbox at tinyletter.com/non-monogamy-help, and you can follow us at non-monogamy-help at Twitter. Cool. All right, I'm going to go now. Thank you so much for listening. And yeah, you will hear the episode 14 in 2 weeks. Thanks. Bye. You've been listening to Non-Monogamy Help. Our podcast music has been provided by Chris Albury Jones at albury-jones.com, and the art was made by Dom Jung at domduong.com. Thank you for listening.